Hi, my name is Tiara, and I will be talking about how social media affects the political polarization of the United States. So, I want you to think about how often you scroll on your phone or on social media. A lot of us use apps like Instagram, TikTok, or X to understand what is going on in the world. We may not intentionally or go out of our way to understand through these platforms, but it may have happened through just pointless scrolling where we just see a little bit of humor content or gym content, and then we come across some politics that may tug on our emotions, maybe make us feel upset or passionate or angry, whatever it may be. And we don't realize that as we scroll, we aren't just seeing news, but we're seeing a version of politics that is becoming more and more divided. So, my argument today is that social media plays a major role in America's politics today. And I wouldn't say that social media necessarily caused political polarization, but it definitely is making it a lot worse through echo chambers, through the spread of misinformation, through how we gain our information in general. And this is a serious problem because when citizens and politicians are becoming more extreme in their own opinions and refusing to compromise with other people, our government stops functioning properly. And then this leads to distrust in our leaders and with one another, which then weakens our democracy overall. So why does this matter? Because polarization isn't just something that happens in Washington, D.C., it affects our everyday lives. And when people refuse to find common ground, it makes it harder for the government to pass laws or solve big national problems. It's also personal. You may have seen it with or experienced it with friendships or relatives where you've had disagreements or arguments over politics, and in some cases these relationships were actually permanently damaged. And this just shows how deeply polarization is affecting our country and why it's so important to understand what is driving it. So, my first point I want to bring up is algorithms and echo chambers. If you don't know, one major way social media increases polarization is through algorithms, and these algorithms are designed to keep you engaged and on their platforms for as long as possible. So when they know that like certain content and they know that you agree with certain content, they're going to keep feeding you that same content over and over, which then creates what we call an echo chamber. F. Rosinchi explains in 2024 that this has a reinforcing effect, where people eventually wall themselves off from any other viewpoints beside their own. And when you only see perspectives that match your own beliefs, those beliefs become more extreme over time. And then you just stop considering other perspectives because you rarely see them. This isolation also makes it easier for misinformation to spread because if you think about it, if you are in a digital circle where everyone shares the same opinion as yourself, then you're less likely to question if the source or the content that you're engaging with is actually factual or reliable. And instead of having one shared understanding of facts, we all end up living in separate information worlds. Another point is that we no longer trust the same sources of information. And when we can't agree on sources that are reliable, then we can't agree on basic facts. 2025 Pew Research Center showed that there was a major decline in trust. Only 56% of adult U.S. citizens say that they can trust national news. And there's a big gap between groups. For example, there's 44% of Republicans can trust national news and 69% of Democrats can trust national news. This matters because when we don't have a shared baseline of what is truth, then it's impossible to have a productive conversation. And even though trust in social media itself is very low, there are many people that still use it as their main news source, which then just adds more confusion and division to the mix. Another point I want to bring up is emotional division and real-world impact, because social media also changes the way we feel about people who disagree with us. Researcher Costantino explains that algorithms often prioritize content with the highest engagement, with the most likes and shares. This creates an us versus them mindset, where politics isn't just about policy, but it's about identity and emotion. We've seen a real-world example of this during the January 6th Capitol riot, where weeks leading up to this, there were a lot of spread false claims over social media about election fraud, which then angered a lot of people and then led to extreme actions. And this shows that the division that we see online isn't just something that is internet drama, but it is something that can lead to real world consequences, that can lead to violence, that can then lead to a threat of our safety in our country. So when we stop seeing the other side as people who have different perspectives or different opinions and ideas, and we begin to see them as our enemies, then our democracy is in trouble. So in conclusion, social media has a huge impact on how divided we are today. It makes our existing problems worse by lowering our trust, and it keeps us in bubbles where we only hear what we want to hear. Doing this project made me realize that polarization isn't just about who has the best arguments, but it's also about how our brains react to the emotions that algorithms trigger. I was surprised by Costantino's research that showed how much our personal relationships are being damaged just by the way apps are designed. My favorite part was looking at the actual data from Pew Research, because it showed that it isn't just a feeling, but that our loss of trust can actually be measured. My least favorite part was realizing how hard it is to actually fix these problems, because again, these apps are designed to only feed into what we want to hear, what we want to see. So when you get so caught up into only one perspective, it's kind of hard to break out of that bubble, and it's also just a pride problem. No one wants to switch over to a different perspective when that's all they've ever seen. So I would advise, and for myself, moving forward, I want to be more careful about the news that I am engaging with, and I want to make sure that I'm looking for different perspectives outside of what I already know, and that way I don't get stuck in my own echo chamber. Thank you.